And what's happening today?
Well, basically, in this building behind me, we've got Gordon Brown's giving evidence to the Chilcot inquiry about his role in funding the Iraq War. And of course, what we've got outside is this rather minuscule SWP protest against Gordon Brown's involvement in the war.
Well, is it SWP or is it Stop the War? Because the two are split apart now, aren't
they? Well, it's in that case, yes, Stop the War. SWP.
So why do you think it's important to protest outside an inquiry where Gordon Brown is inside?
I'd rather protest inside, to be honest, but I don't think this lot are going to let us in there. But no, I think it's important that at least he knows that there's opposition, and just in general that people know that there is opposition to the war, because it's been fading for so long now, since the massive events, of course, back in 2003 when 2 million people were on the streets. And a general consciousness has been fading, even though we're now entering, of course, our 9th consecutive year of warfare.
Some folk would say that the 2 million people on the streets of London and the 30 million people estimate for the total number of anti-war demonstrators on 800 cities of the world that day kind of showed that public protest doesn't actually stop wars happening.
It's a part of the process. Big events like, for example, the March on London in 2003 when 2 million people attended cannot be the entire movement. Unfortunately, with the Stop the War Coalition, they were allowed to become the entire movement. Unfortunately, in terms of actually stopping the war, they're ineffective. It needs to be controlled and then added with things like militant direct action, general strikes, that kind of thing, to actually have an effect on the war. Things like mass marches and things like the event today are more of a movement building event to spread your movement among more people.
I'm intrigued you mentioned direct action there, because one of the young people inspired to start a direct action movement, Tamsin Orman of Climate Rush fame, in a recent video on the Climate Rush website, stated that it was because the great big standard British left protest on Saturday the 15th of February 2003, when about 2 million people were marched from A to B to listen to clerics and MPs and trade union bosses, had so little effect that she cited that as her and many other young people's reason for taking up direct action. In what ways do you think direct action could be more effective than standard A to B marches?
Well, it shows a will. Anyone can march from A to B. You don't have to particularly care about the issue. You can take a sign and just march. To take direct action, which carries, of course, possibly the risk of arrest, the loss of freedom and some form of injury, implies a massively higher level of opposition. Also, of course, it targets economic problems, and also, it threatens the government at a much higher level. If they're threatened with, a march from A to B, it's what's that going to do? But direct action, mass direct action kind of has a much higher impact on the government themselves.
In the run-up to the mass worldwide anti-war protest on 15th of February 2003, I developed a direct action plan to block 8 bridges in central London and bring London crashing to a gridlock. And I got to present it to the Stop the War Coalition National Council, and it was listened to in polite silence and then quietly passed over. Why do you think it is that the Stop the War Coalition has persisted with old methods that seem to have little or no effect, when, as we know, most young folk in the UK are moved to take direct action rather than, as you say, just walk from A to B?
Well, because, in my opinion, the central, up until very recently, when the Stop the War Coalition and the SWP split, the primary motive of the Stop the War Coalition wasn't to stop the war. It was to funnel more and more members into the SWP.
So you're saying it was mostly a front organisation?
Yes.
To build the membership of the SWP?
Yes.
So why have the SWP cut it off?
Because I think the various steering committee members have possibly awoken a little to realise that their 9-year-long campaign has had zero effect. and it might be time to start doing things differently. And there has been a noticeable shift on the website of the Stop the War Coalition, which is stopwar.org.uk. They have started to advertise direct action events. They advertised the most recent EDO demo in Brighton, and they're currently advertising the Decommissioners trial. Now, the Decommissioner was a small group of people in Brighton who broke into a bomb factory owned by the EDO company and caused several £1 million worth of damage by smashing up equipment.
That's the way to do it,
exactly,
says Mr. Funch.
And they've been in prison without trial for almost a year now, and more than a year, and their trial's coming up on the 17th of May, and that's been advertised on the Stop the War website, and I think that shows a shift, perhaps the beginning of a shift towards more effectual tactics after the realisation that 9 years of peaceful marching from A to B has had absolutely no effect.
So in fact, it sounds like the implication is that the Central Committee members of the SWP who were at the heart of the Stop the War Coalition being chucked out of the SWP might lead to a more direct action oriented turn in the Stop the War Coalition, which can only be a good thing.
Yeah, we can only hope.
And talking of direct action initiatives on the streets of London, what can you tell us about International Workers' Day this year?
Well, I'm a very small part of a cooperative called the Election Meltdown. And basically, on the 1st of May, we're currently in the build-up to the election, of course. We're planning a May Day Carnival parade from 4 points, dragging each one of the 4 horses of the apocalypse, dragging the party leaders all the way to Parliament Square in order for them to be hung symbolically in a carnivalesque atmosphere. Once we've out with the corrupt old order, which has proved itself to be hopelessly corrupt in the last few years, and then we're going to be holding some form of People's Assembly in a newly founded democracy village right in front of Parliament. And the democracy village will hopefully last all the way until 6th of May, which is when we think the election's going to be. And the People's Assembly will be able to, decide on any issues they want. People will be able to take the floor and talk on whatever they want. Anybody will have a chance to talk. It will be directly democratic rather than representatively democratic.
But everybody's going to get a chance to vote for the MP of their choice, probably on Thursday the 6th of May this year. What's so different about this thing you call direct democracy? Why is it different or better? Because
representative democracy, you don't vote for issues, you vote for people. You don't have any control over what those people do once you voted for them. With direct democracy, you decide. If there is an issue that needs deciding, you decide it. With representative democracy, you elect someone and then various issues come up and that person you've elected decides them without any liaison with you at all.
So I guess you could say that with the system we've got at the moment, we're invited to give away our political power one day every 4 years, and then that's it. That's pretty much the be-all and end-all of our political engagement with society. But it sounds like what you're saying is that if we're meeting regularly in a People's Assembly, we're not giving our political power away, but we're exercising it collectively with other folk who agree on our stance on the issues that matter to us.
Exactly, I think that's a brilliant summing up. Britain's democracy has often been called an elected dictatorship. You have no power in terms of politics, you have no political power, apart from for that 1 microsecond when you drop your vote into the box. That's when you hold power. Apart from that, you have no power. We literally vote for a 4-year dictatorship.
At this point, I'd really like to be able to quote verbatim a piece by Rousseau on English freedom, and yet I haven't got it in my head, so it'll have to come in the voiceover.
The English people believes itself to be free. It is gravely mistaken. It is free only during election of members of Parliament. As soon as the members are elected, the people is enslaved. It is nothing. In the brief moment of its freedom, the English people make such use of that freedom that it deserves to lose it. So said Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a French philosopher and writer whose novels inspired the leaders of the French Revolution.
So I've seen a video online of a People's Assembly being held outside the Bella Centre in Copenhagen when the COP15 talks are taking place there on Wednesday the 16th of December. Does that give folk an idea about what a People's Assembly looks like?
I think that would be quite a good model. I mean, obviously that was a specifically climate change themed assembly due to the fact that it was the COP meeting and it was all to do with climate change. But yes, I think broadly that gives a very good representation of what would happen, although hopefully without the right police.
Yeah, Danish riot police showing up at Parliament Square to arrest thousands of people would be
a bit of a shock.
A bit of an extra jurisdictional insertion in British democracy, I think.